how leopards hunt is because they don't indulge in an all-out chase like a cheetah. So what they have to do is they have to creep to within no more than about 5 meters of their mark before they pounce. And then they will, if it's large prey like a deer or a buffalo, they will kill it with a bite to the throat or the back of the neck. But for smaller prey like a peacock or a rabbit, just whacking it with their front paws should be able to kill it outright. Of course, in most of Asia, leopards are outcompeted by tigers, but in Sri Lanka there are no tigers, which makes those leopards the top predators. They're bigger, bolder, more brazen, and they don't drag their kills into trees. They will feed on the ground, and they're Sri Lanka's top predators. But even so, I would not want to go up against one of these guys. This is where they're found in Asia, well, in Sri Lanka. The next animal I'm going to show you is the largest land mammal. It is the Asian elephant. Well, the Asian elephant is a smaller cousin of the African elephant, but while the African elephant is much bigger than the Asian elephant, this animal is still immense. In fact, it's about 3 meters tall at the shoulder, with a fully grown male being able to weigh about 6 tons, and they have the formidable power. In fact, they can actually snap a massive tree trunk in half as easily as us snapping a matchstick. Of course, it's only the females that are in herds, of course. Also, the herds of Asian elephants usually consist of adult females and their calves and adolescent males, although they tend to leave when they become young adults. Of course, the males are usually on their own and only join a herd briefly to mate. And of course, elephants are very, very unpredictable. In fact, they are. That's usually when they're at their most dangerous is when they've got young calves, and the females will do anything to protect their young. And I've actually heard of elephants flipping jeeps while protecting their calves. So it's always wise to read their body language and just keep your distance. And of course, but there's a certain time of year when the male elephants can be more dangerous. It's called must, and it's basically when bull elephants go into season, and it can last for 2 or 3 months, where their bodies are packed with 10 times the amount of testosterone, and they can be very, very grumpy, unpredictable, and aggressive. And they've just got one thing on their mind, which is finding a girlfriend. Of course, an argumentative elephant is something you do not want to come across. They can outrun you, can crush a car like a tin can, and can kill you with a single swipe of their trunk. But, of course, in much of Asia, elephants have been used as a beast of burden, like horses, but of course, elephants were also used in war as ways for armies to basically just shoot down at their enemies from above. Of course, that practice has since been stopped, but also another thing elephants were unfairly used for was circus performances, and that was just incredibly cruel and unfair. But that has since been stopped, and a lot of circus elephants are now living in retirement in special elephant rescue sanctuaries where they're properly looked after and where they're cared for, they can't return to the wild. But in many parts of Asia, elephants are also used in safaris because a lot of the national parks they're used in, elephants are always treated a lot better there because they're well cared for and they're always looked after by the rangers. In fact, there are a few advantages to doing an Asian safari on the back of an elephant. For one thing, elephants are very unlikely to frighten animals off. They can move very, very quietly. Secondly, there's elevations, so you get twice as far off the ground as you would be if you were walking. You're also much safer to go through the 3-metre high and aptly named elephant grass, but also wild Asian elephants naturally inhabit the park, so wildlife like deer, tigers and rhinos are used to the size of them and won't be scared away. Although they're not always the easiest to film from though, as my grandparents went to Nepal a few years back and they said like it wasn't easy to film or photograph from the back of an elephant. Of course, unfortunately, Asian elephants are now in trouble all over their range, from habitat loss to human-wildlife conflict, where people have been encroaching on the elephants' land that they have walked on for generations, which results in crop raiding and quite often brings elephants to be into conflict with humans, where the humans end up hurting the elephants and the elephants end up retaliating and attacking people. But, I mean, there are conservationists working to stop these conflicts and try and get people and elephants to coexist, because elephants can live for 60 to 70 years. And also, another fact about elephants is that they have probably the longest pregnancy of any mammal, as a female can carry a baby for about 22 months, so nearly 2 years. Of course, elephants are also very, very intelligent animals, like they can remember, they can mourn their dead, and they even have strong family bonds. Of course, I've never seen Asian elephants in the wild. I hope to one day, but I would also like to ride on the back of an elephant, because that is something I would really want to try one day. Here is their range in Asia. Now, I'm going to show you all the difference between the African and the Asian elephant. Here is an African elephant and an Asian elephant. I mean, the first big difference is the ears. African elephants have larger ears, Asian elephants have smaller ears, but also Asian elephants have these two distinctive lumps on their heads, where the African elephants don't have those. But also, and this is something that not many people know, is that in Asian elephants, it's only the males that have tusks, whereas in African elephants, both genders have tusks. Now, for one of the largest reptiles on Earth, and probably the strangest of the crocodilian family, it is the gharial. Now, gharials are in the crocodilian family, which is the same group as alligators, crocodiles and caiman. And they've been around on the planet virtually unchanged for over 300 million years. And of course, probably the most bizarre thing about the gharial is the snout. I mean, it's very, very long and very, very thin, and that's all down to the fact that Unlike alligators and crocodiles, gharial don't feed on mammals. In fact, they are specialists in catching fish, amphibians, and crustaceans. And of course, they also have a lighter skull than other crocodiles and different muscles in their legs, which make them faster through the water, as well as their long, thin snouts, which can sweep through the water and through shoals of fish. And of course, this bulbous growth on the end of the nose is found on the mature males. In Indian, it's called a gura, meaning pod, and it's actually used to create a humming noise that can attract females. Of course, gharial, unfortunately, are one of the rarest and most threatened crocodilians in the world, but there's probably less than 2,000 breeding pairs left in the wild, fewer than even giant pandas or tigers. In fact, hunting for their skins, as well as habitat pollution, or pollution and dammings of the rivers where they live, and overfishing are thought to be the causes. For me, it's a terrifying thought to think that an animal that's been around on the planet since long before the dinosaurs could be coming to the brink of extinction because of us. But there is hope for the gharial, because conservationists are building up breeding populations in captivity, and also they are working with local people to preserve their habitats, with fishing being monitored and dams being built away from their habitat, as well as anti-pollution, which hopefully will help increase their numbers. Here is their range. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you all is the largest of its species and one of the largest mammals. It is the Greater One-Horned Rhino. The Greater One-Horned Rhino is the largest of the rhinos. It's found in Asia, hence its name. It has only one horn on the end of its snout, but also it's the most aquatic of all of the rhinos, so it's very rarely found far from water. Of course, they're mostly solitary, with the exceptions of mothers and calves, but occasionally they will form small groups. In fact, when defending territories, males will battle with other males. Of course, their eyesight is terrible, but they have a very, very keen sense of smell and hearing. Of course, they're easily surprised, so when they're surprised or feel threatened, they will charge, even at people. Of course, when I said earlier about the tiger being able to hunt rhino, and in fact I'll get to that bit as well. Of course, if you look at a one-horned rhino, you can see just the way its skin has folded over its skeleton, like you can see the ribs poking through, and those lumpy bumps are called tubercles all over the folds of skin. It just looks like a suit of armour. I mean, if it's standing in the mist, he looks like a dinosaur. And of course, this is an animal that does have to be very, very good at defending itself, because it has the Bengal tiger, the largest of the big cats, living right in its own territory. And if it gets the chance, a Bengal tiger will take a young rhino. So these guys have to be able to defend themselves against the largest of the big cats and the top predator of Asia. And the way they do that is just by having a really bad temper. Of course, most of the animals that I always find the most fascinating are carnivores, which means they're animals that eat meat, and they